One Republican that would dare to make that statement.
How are the Democrats going to be able to deal with the flag burning issue? Because that's a symbol.
I watched it on C-SPAN this morning, all these speeches, and most of them were against the amendment. Now, the language that was used in the speeches basically went like this, that the Bill of Rights is there to protect the right of people who espouse ideas that the average guy may find repugnant, but he has the right to say it because that's what freedom of speech is all about. Now, why aren't they saying that about Two Live Crew? They never would. It's just that the whole flag burning thing is a political football, and you can posture and pose and get in there and look like Joe Blow statesman and make those kinds of things, but nobody is standing up for the rights of Two Live Crew or any other group who wants to say what they have on their mind. You can agree with them or you can disagree with them, but it should be your right to decide after you heard what they have to say.
Any predictions on how the flag burning thing is going to go?
I don't think that it's going to pass. I don't think that it's going to I don't think it's going to get out of the Congress.
So there won't be, your prediction is that there's not going to be a constitutional amendment?
I don't think there will be. I think we're going to get off lucky on this one. It's going to be close, but I don't think that it's going to be brought to a vote.
If it is brought to a vote and Democrats are up for election this fall, do you think that could cause them to be more conservative than they might otherwise be?
Probably.
We're talking about freedom of speech, Frank, and another thing is the banning of books. I mentioned earlier in the setup that...
Little Red Riding Hood,
yeah.
Huh?
What do you think about that?
Well, that wine can be awfully dangerous, but certainly not as dangerous as beer. I think that it's going too far to throw the book out because it talked about wine, but if Little Red Riding Hood was taking beer to the grandmother, I'd raise my eyebrows at that.
Fahrenheit 451? What do we have here?
Well, there are certain precedents in other restrictive societies that we could be looking at. We're not quite to the stage where we're piling books in the middle of the town square and setting them on fire, but it could happen. There are Christian groups that go from town to town, like, what do they call, what's the name of those brothers? Peters Brothers,
Steve Peters,
who have been going from town to town for 10 years sponsoring record burnings in the name of Jesus. That's their hook. They come into town, bring your evil rock and roll records and we'll burn them for you, in the name of Jesus. So maybe that wouldn't play in the heart of New York City, but it certainly plays in some small towns. I know they've visited Pennsylvania, several places, and a friend of mine actually went to one of their meetings to see what was going on. Came back with some horror stories about the kind of stupidity that is being promoted. And these guys, that's how they earn their living. Burn records, take up a collection, publish literature, sell pamphlets, sell tapes about backwards masking, all this kind of stuff. It's a racket.
Talking about Little Red carrying a bottle of wine. What happened with that? Has it become trendy to kind of say, well, I'm no longer drinking alcohol anymore? Was this something pushed on us by Nancy Reagan? And has it affected people's mind?
I don't know. I'm not a big drinker myself. I happen to like wine. I like it with food. I could never imagine just sitting around drinking wine for no reason at all, or same with any other kind of an alcoholic beverage. It's just not my lifestyle. But I think that if you want to drink it, you have the right to drink it. So long as it doesn't impair you and you get in a car and kill somebody, you want to do whatever you want to do with your own body, up to and including killing yourself. So you don't have the right to kill somebody else, but you want to kill yourself, whether you do it fast or you do it slow, that's your business because you own yourself. That's what personal freedom is all about.
Part of the new proposal for the NEA language keeps referring to something called the sensitive nature of public sponsorship. Let's start talking about the whole NEA grant, because you see these things.
Let's call a spade a spade. The total amount of the budget for the NEA is what, $157 million a year?
Yeah.
Okay, compared to everything else that gets spent on a federal level.
Peanuts.
Yeah, less than peanuts. And I debated this issue on a TV show called Crossfire with a guy named Dannemeyer, who's one of the people who would like to see the NEA disposed of. And aside from the fact that the overall budget is small, I asked him specifically how much money had been spent out of that budget for those projects which they deemed objectionable. You want to know what the total amount was? $45,000. So $45,000 out of $157 million. We're talking micro peanuts here. And
one or two people possibly, right?
Right. The bulk of the money from the NEA And the part of the NEA that I personally support is those monies which go for community activities that involve multiples of people. In other words, NEA would sponsor orchestras, they sponsor ballet companies in cities where they wouldn't have any kind of activity like that. I question the need for the NEA or any government agency to be involved in the funding for individual artists. You owe them something, and you run the risk at all times, especially with this new language, that the government can influence the quality of the work or the content of the work.
Language of the new NEA proposal says that this act demonstrates a commitment to artistic excellence, which is sensitive to the nature of public sponsorship and does not deliberately denigrate the cultural heritage of the United States or violate prevailing standards of obscenity or indecency.
That means if you take this money, you will keep your mouth shut. That's layman's translation.
Well, how would you feel about artists who take that money? I mean, you might as well...
Well, I feel sorry for them, because under these circumstances, you would definitely have to be a desperate individual to take that tainted money. It's tainted money. If you sign a piece of paper that says you will do those things or avoid doing this list of things that they have in there, you're putting yourself in a box. But they're all different kinds of artists, and they're all different kinds of economic needs, and I'm sure that there are extenuating circumstances, but I believe that the people in the U.S. government would be just as happy to have nobody take the money, because it's just another way of wiping out the NEA. The people who sponsor this don't want an NEA to begin with. They would like to kill the NEA. They've said so. And so I think that every artist has a right to earn a living and stay alive and be supported. But when you have a government agency that is demanding that all the work that be done according to a formula set up by the United States government, what kind of art is that? That's propaganda. So you might as well go around and hire all the artists in the United States, say, hey, you want a job, you have to do this non-content and boring stuff that we will approve. I think that is not something that I would support.
So you think several of the people who are recipients, who are turning down the money, the choreographer here in L.A., the Shakespeare Festival in Oregon, that's an effective symbolic gesture?
Well, I think it's a symbolic gesture. The question of effectiveness, I don't know, because most people in the United States don't care about art. Certainly nobody in the government cares about it. That's reflected in the amount of money for the budget. And because we don't care about art, it makes it a little bit difficult for us to act as a real international player, because other cultures on this planet can project their will or project the personality of their people through their culture. They have a ministry of culture, or they have some mechanism by which the better thoughts of that society are projected to other nations. We don't have that. We never cared about it. What we project to other nations is military force. Now think about that. We're supposed to be the land of the free, the home of the brave, but actually we're turning into bullies, and we're turning into cowardly bullies at that. Worse than that, indebted, cowardly bullies. We don't even have enough cash in our own bank account to go out and buy the weapons that we're using to impress everybody. We've got a national deficit because we borrowed money to build bombs that we're never going to use. So that means we're not only an indebted bunch of cowardly bullies, we're also really, really stupid and pretty bad businessmen to boot. Look at what these guys are doing. You know, you look at the S&L crisis, $500 billion so far. $500 billion. Now, how much money is that? Well, for $500 billion, I think you could build all the new hospitals you ever wanted. You could take everyone in America who is homeless. Let's say there's 3 million homeless people. You could give each one of them $1 million. You could take care of all the bad roads. You could, all these parts of the country that are affected by floods over and over again, you could fix all of that. That could all be done. We could turn the United States into utopia. Instead, what do you got? You've got guys who already made a fortune off of it, who are still living in their mansions, who have never been brought to justice, and they have been able to pull off this crime of the century. This is a big, big robbery now. $500 billion is a big robbery. And they've done it with the assistance of people in both parties in the Congress, to say nothing of the activity of Ronald Reagan. It's not just the Republicans who have done this. The Democrats voted for a lot of this stuff too. And the way I look at it, they all belong in jail. People forget